everyone. We are talking today about marketing your DIY legal products. And if you didn't watch that first video, I will put the link in the comments. But it is really all about a passive income stream that works for you. It helps promote growth. It works alongside of your legal services. And a lot of the experiences and practices here are applicable to other industries too. I will say a lot of the marketing discussion that we're going to have today, a lot of what Dorna and Erin have done, and Dorna runs a tech company. So obviously there are applications to her experience that extend beyond legal, because her practices and my practices as a marketer apply to many verticals. But the specific topic today is stemming from that first conversation and going into how do we actually tell the world about it? How do we get paying customers? How do we get brand evangelists? How do we get raving fans? And it starts with identifying who they are, your target audience, your client avatar. So we will talk soup to nuts about how to identify your audience, how to market to them, how to align your messaging to client and customer needs, and then how to build on the good work you're doing through reviews and create this cycle, this loop that feeds back into itself for even better messaging, client testimonials, and all those things that make it easier to be a marketer when you have your own clients' words selling your product for you, and that working alongside your services you're delivering, often helping you scale your reach and impact far beyond that which you can achieve just with your client base alone. So as a brief introduction, I am Maddy Martin. I am the head of growth and education for SMITH.AI. We're putting on these master's series webinars to help educate and expose some of the best practices across all of our experts in our greater community. And two of those experts are Erin Levine and Dorna Moini. So Erin runs Hello Divorce and Dorna runs Documate. And if you would both just introduce yourselves and your experience with this topic of DIY legal services, legal products, that would be wonderful to start off our discussion. So Erin, we'll start with you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm hoping that today's masterclass is a little bit more intimate, that we get some really good questions from you guys, even if they pertain directly to a pain point that you're having, because I think that what you're experiencing is likely what so many of the rest of us have experienced or are currently experienced. So please don't be shy. Many of you know me. I own Hello Divorce, which is an online platform that helps self-represented folks get through the divorce process start to finish without having to retain an attorney on the billable traditional status quo model. I also have a law firm, Levine Family Law Group, and I've had that law firm for 10 years and have practiced law for 15 years. So I really had to build a strong law firm brand that could pretty much run itself while I pivoted over to Hello Divorce and spent time building up the earnings there. And so I can speak to sort of both sides of things and the difference with the client avatar and the sales cycles and the call to actions and all that good stuff, and hopefully be able to provide you some real actionable tips that you can use in your own practice or while you begin to get that DIY product out there. There is no better time. This is the absolute best time to be doing it, which I find to be incredibly exciting, and I hope you do too.
Thank you so much, Erin. It's really an empowering message. And again, if you haven't watched that first video, please go to our YouTube channel and do so. Dorna, tell us a little bit about Documate, which is your company.
Yes, thank you, Maddy, for having me, and everyone else for having me here as well. I am the founder of Documate. So we are a document automation platform at our core, but really what we do is we help lawyers build legal products that you can put out into the world, sell, and create efficiencies within your firm, but also really monetize by using them in the external world. I also used to be a lawyer. I still am a lawyer, I guess, but I haven't practiced since I started Documate. And the genesis of Documate was actually a platform for domestic violence survivors. So I have a little bit of experience more kind of in that niche area and in launching a legal product, but also now I'll hopefully be talking a little bit more broad strokes about what some of our clients do to build products, test them, get them out into the market and sell them. And, you know, I think Maddy mentioned at the beginning, you know, we run startups as well. So even though I'm not specifically running a legal product, I think a lot of these concepts that we'll be talking about today translate from startup world to like the lessons you learn in Silicon Valley, all the way through to what you're building at your law firm.
Wonderful. And, you know, just for everyone, so we're up to speed on a DIY legal product. Erin, I don't know if you want to share your screen really quickly on Hello Divorce, but just to briefly describe, okay, what is this? So we're all on the same page. What is it that we're talking about marketing here? And are you telling us to be the next LegalZoom? Sounds intimidating. How do we sort of see this as an entity?
Sure. So this is hellodivorce.com. It's the screen you're seeing that I've just put up. If you go to your browser and put hellodivorce.com, you might have a totally different homepage. And that's because a lot of times we are A/B testing, meaning we are trying out different call to actions and different looks and feels to see what people respond to best. So everything from that top line where we're asking people to schedule, in some cases you'll see that, in other cases you'll see a helpful resource on how you can navigate divorce during COVID. But we'll get more into that later. What Hello Divorce is at its core is a web platform that's built upon Dorna's Documate. And people use it differently depending on how much their budget is and how much time and energy they want to put into their divorce and how much help they feel like they need from a third party, like a paralegal or a document specialist, or in some cases, a lawyer or a mediator. So at its core, a DIY legal product can be, sorry, I should have been logged in.
Totally fine.
A DIY legal product can be as simple as helping people to automate a very complex legal form. Because as you know, the forms are designed to be able to do them without a lawyer, but the questions are so legal that most people don't know how to answer them. So one of the things that you can do is find an area or a practice and be able to take some or all of the forms and make them a whole lot easier. So as an example, this is our California Divorce Navigator, and the first document that you have to do when you get a divorce is a petition. Nothing, I'm not signed in on anything right now. So in this case, we use Documate to ask people a series of questions. Let me find one that's, here we go. Ask people a series of questions that they can answer, so in plain English. And they follow this interview. At times, they might need some extra help because the concepts are even hard for us to put into plain English. And so we can add a link to a great resource or a video that explains the concept. But essentially, we're guiding people all the way through. And when they complete it, they have a product, a DIY product. They now have the pleading or the form that they need to be able to move forward with whatever legal issue they have. So it could be as simple as a basic will or a power of attorney, and it could be as complex as taking someone through an entire lawsuit, which is essentially what a divorce is.
Got it. Thank you so much, Erin. And I think that sets us up really well for the first question, which is, who is this for? And how does that differ, if it does differ, from your normal, let's say law firm's target audience? Does it differ? And if so, in what ways, Erin?
Yeah, so most people that are coming to our law firm already have identified that they need a lawyer or want a lawyer and are ready to purchase. The difference is when they come to Hello Divorce or they see Hello Divorce, it's a much longer sales cycle a lot of the time because they are either just thinking about divorce or they're doing that initial research to find out what options they have and what's going to be the best for them. So I think that there really is some key differences there. With the law firm, we're just trying to get people to the site. We're just trying to get people to book a call. And with Hello Divorce, with our DIY legal product, we're inviting people in to trust our brand and to come to us when they need us. Does that answer?
Definitely. And I think that takes us into, first of all, have you identified the target audience for your law practice, for your business, first and foremost? If you haven't done that, that's absolutely critical. If you started your law firm, and this is not, necessarily even the minority, a lot of people start their law firms, they have an initial client list, a book of business, and they carry that through with referrals, with community engagement, and never have a strong need until the need slaps you in the face. And then you really start to scramble and say, who is my audience? Who have I been serving? How can I get more of them? Because relying on referrals alone, which is its own conversation, is challenging and being sustainable enough to grow your business predictably. So what are some of the exercises, Erin, that you recommend people do to identify who the target audience is based on your price point, based on the needs that you serve, based on your target audience and the market size, and maybe even the competition and what they're doing?
Yeah, so I think that is so important, and I cannot stress it enough, because every time you're developing any type of marketing campaign, whether it be an email funnel, whether it be a social media post, you have to identify exactly who you are speaking to and which niche you are serving, because there are so much noise out there. And how are you going to differentiate yourself and get people to actually click? And the way to do that is to speak to them. And so one exercise that we do at least once a year is really sit down and develop 3 or maybe even 1 client avatar. Who is that person that you think is the ideal client that you want to serve? What do they wear? Where do they shop? What are their interests? What are their pain points? What are they concerned about when it comes to divorce? For me personally, I'm in the divorce space. So as an example, at my law firm, the client avatar might be very concerned about their spouse hiding assets, right? That's a much more litigious issue that comes up in high conflict divorces, right? But with ours, like, it could be as simple as, I'm not sure how to tell my spouse that I want a divorce in a way that doesn't turn this thing into an all-out war. Or I want to make sure I get the paperwork done as cheaply as possible without jeopardizing my rights. So we really want to hone in and tell a story about this person. And that way, every time we're posting, every time we're thinking about a marketing campaign, we're thinking directly about how we can target that person, what it is that they need to hear in order to feel like we know what they need and that they're being heard.
So 2 important things, I want to draw on there. One is that in identifying the other interests that are common among your target audience, you can actually target them better, especially if you're using social media, a lot of those interests are easier to identify than someone who is looking for or contemplating a divorce, which is not always so disclosed on social channels. So what are the other factors that may indicate that person is in the market for your services to some extent, or at least they fit the profile of someone who is likely to be pursuing a divorce? The other thing that I'll say is that you use the word we. So who is involved in this discussion? If you are looking at your law firm, and Dorna, obviously you have a lot of experience working with other law firms directly, who commonly is involved in this identification of the target audience and avatar? Who would you bring in if you're a law firm owner to help you make a really good decision here, both internal and potentially external?
Yeah, anyone but the lawyer. No, I mean, we are great. Lawyers are amazing, and nobody knows our consumer better than we do. But we look at it at a much more macro level, and our staff and our consultants and our vendors are the ones who deal with our clients at a much more micro level. We know that their child is sick and home from school, so they weren't able to meet their in-person appointment. We know, so much more. Our paralegals and our legal assistants and the people who answer our phones know so much about our client avatar. And so to bring them into the discussion is not only incredibly helpful, but it's also really fun and a great way to get your team, especially if you have contractors or especially if you're remote, to feel more involved and invested. So I always think about any of these marketing exercises as going far beyond marketing. There's so much there, right? Like it's creating your team. It's talking about price point. It's thinking about what needs to change on the development side. Each of these different aspects of your client avatar is going to help you in so many different ways. And it feels like an exercise that is not important, but it has been probably the most important aspect of marketing for us.
Okay. And would you advocate, or have you, had experience bringing in an outside firm for this sort of exploration, or do you think it's something that can be capably done in-house?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I've done both. So the first time I did it, I hired someone on a flat fee to develop my ideal client avatar PDF after I answered a ton of questions that she felt I needed to answer. And what I got back was a very pretty version of the data that I gave her. So that was an epic fail. Then I brought in a coach to spend an hour with us, helping us not to project manage. I have some great people on my team. Maybe it's you, that can project manage, but who could come in and help us think about this. And that was incredibly helpful and a whole lot cheaper.
Okay, so identifying someone who can help you ask the right questions is paramount. And then whoever carries it out, if you don't have the resources in-house, you have more of a mature law firm, obviously, and you're not just running a solo practice and exploring this, you may have resources in-house. If you don't, you may need someone to help you flush it out and fulfill it. But you, in your case, actually had the ability to fulfill that in-house. You just sort of needed the facilitator, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We had already done our research in terms of finding some great free resources on the internet for how you can develop your ideal client or your ideal customer, and who you're going to target. And we did that. I think it was a Boss Babe download that's not limited to women. You can certainly get it. And if you need it, you can email me, or maybe I can give it to Maddy. But that was my favorite one out of all the resources that we used. They just had an excellent one for asking the right questions to be able to start to identify who we want to serve. it might feel a little bit scary niching down, but ultimately people have to feel like this product is for them or they're not going to buy it. So if they feel like this product can go to anyone, that it can serve anyone, then it doesn't feel like a good option for them.
Yeah, and I'll add to that in terms of this, we're talking a lot about scoping in terms of the customer, but what we see a little bit more broad strokes as the biggest mistakes that people make is scoping, and it kind of happens in 3 different areas. The customer, not knowing who your customer is upfront and narrowing down, honing in on who they are, where they are, what is their user persona, but also on the area of law and the jurisdiction. Because I think, you know, if you look at what Erin's done with Hello Divorce, they started pretty small with like California divorce, and then now they're expanding out into across the country. But I'm assuming, you know, what we hear is you learn a lot of lessons early on from those first customers. So having had a very narrow scope to begin with allows you to apply those lessons as you go forward and develop that process if you didn't already have it in the first place. Because this whole exercise is really getting your process to be more stringent and having a more kind of logic-based structure for your process.
Well, and also if you are stricter with your initial audience, then you have fewer variables to test against. The more that you are broad in the beginning, the harder it is to pin down what works and what doesn't, because you have more differences between those in that initial target audience. So starting small, if you've done your research and it's related to your existing client base, and maybe even adjacent in terms of your existing client base knowing others in your target audience, and you can generate referrals in that way to people who they know who may not have the same means or the same confidence that they need a lawyer yet, then you can sort of reach into almost your existing community.
Yeah, can I just add to that real quick?
Please.
I did the opposite, right? Like I started really broad, and Dorna's heard me say this before, but I think it makes sense to bring it up here too, is that I thought that you want to give every option available. That's what makes us unique. I thought that was our differentiator, that whatever it is you need, we got it. And I got no sales for 3 months after launch. None. And then I had to really rethink, well, who is going to be best served by this product? Because if they're best served by it, they're going to go out and they're going to tell everyone, and they're going to have a positive experience, and they're going to be able to move on with their divorce in a way that they feel empowered in their next chapter. And, you know, it was shocking to see how different it was once we pared down our offerings and pared down who we were going to target.
I think that that's such a great point, Erin. And it's the same way when, if you've ever boosted a Facebook post or run advertising, you think, oh, I want to reach the most people. Actually, you need to reach people so many times before they actually convert and pay attention, at least 7, 10, if not, new research is showing that it's many multiples actually of what used to be ample impressions now has really sort of upped the ante. If you need to show someone your messaging 20 times before they finally click on your site or your product or contact you, you need to work with a much smaller audience, because you need the circulation and the frequency to them, which is just not achievable with a larger audience. So I completely agree with you there. Now, the question is, where do you point them to? We've seen, Erin and Dorna, I'm sure you have recommendations here too, that Erin, you developed a completely different website. You have hellodivorce.com. And I think when we talk about marketing and getting adoption for your legal products, one of the top questions should be, where are you pointing people to? Are you creating a new website? Are you adding this onto your existing website? What was your sort of process there, Erin? And then Dorna, if you can share what you're seeing as well.
I think it all comes down to what your goal is. If you're using your DIY legal product as a lead generator for your law firm, you better bet it's all over your law firm website. It shows people, right, that like you care, that to the extent that that they can take advantage of lower cost or easier to access services, you have that available to you. If this is a totally separate thing, if you are reaching a completely different audience, which in my case we were, then what made the most sense for us is to develop a completely different website. The other reason why I developed a completely different website is because I had no idea whether this was going to win or bomb. And we had a pretty darn good law firm going, and I didn't want to threaten or jeopardize that brand at all. I didn't want to like have it feel cheapened or well, something must be wrong with the law firm now that she's pivoting into other areas. So it's not that expensive or hard to develop another website. And it felt like the best choice for us. But again, it's really about determining what is the reasoning behind this DIY product. What is do you want people to, is it standalone? Can they use it and be done and call it a day? Or might they use it in conjunction with your services?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we've seen similar things across the board in terms of what our clients are doing as well, where they're making decisions. Do they want this to be an enhancement of their own law firm and sort of rebrand their law firm to be this tech-enabled law firm that you're introducing online workflows to and passing information back and forth from the attorney to the client through some kind of client portal? So that's kind of option one. And option two is, or do you want this to be something that's completely standalone and separate because your message and your branding is very different? Like, you know, the way that Erin was describing, the people who come to her law firm versus the people who come to Hello Divorce are two very different clients. And another thing we see is law firms that are more broad and maybe serving all types of different areas. Maybe you're even just a general lit firm, but then you have your legal tech product that may be something very narrow. Like maybe you just provide estate wills and estates, and you give them an estate planning packet for a specific subset of people. Or for example, we have a client who's doing residential leases, and that's the only thing they do through their legal tech platform. You can go on there, get a residential lease across the country, but they do nothing more than that. So you need to think a little bit beforehand about how you want it to be branded and whether you want it to affect the branding of your law firm as well.
That's a great point. And it's a really good time, I think, for us to say, okay, we understand that there are quite a few things to test. And we talked about messaging. Erin mentioned A/B testing early on for the different components and copywriting on the site. You can obviously do that in email and ads as well. But Dorna, you had some key points to share around actual user testing. Do you want to go into that now and talk about, you know, the best practices for those processes?
Definitely. Let me just go ahead. I'll just share my screen here and kind of go through them with you guys. So this is sort of a little bit of a later phase, because up to now we've been talking about how do you ideate, how do you think about what you're building and get it out into the world. But what we're going to talk about in terms of user testing is what happens after you get it out into the world and you're iterating on that initial idea to hopefully expand it. So the way that we think about user testing is sort of in three different buckets. One is more anecdotal, where you're actually talking to users one-on-one and getting information from them. Second is through more like mass user surveys, where you may not be talking directly to that user, but you're sending them like a Survey Monkey that gives you a lot of data that you can apply. And then third is more analytics driven. So this is what's going to really, you know, and you need more users for the third category. So this may be a little bit later in your customer journey, but this is where you're really going to get broad-based data that you're going to be able to apply to your findings. So anecdotal is very early on, like you just got your product out in the market. Guerrilla testing is the first thing I would do. Is maybe you don't even have anyone to spread to actually use your product. So go into coffee shops. And someone is telling me that gorilla is misspelled. So sorry about that. Maybe I spelled it like the animal. I will fix that on my slide. So that's where you're going into the coffee shop and actually asking people, please test my product for free. I want to watch you use it, and I want to hear what you think about it. Second is observational data. That might be through your actual customers that are coming on board, whether they're live or, you know, in today's age, remote, and that can be just as good. And there you might actually be sitting behind the client and watching them go through the platform, seeing where they get stuck. Like, are there certain pages where they're wondering, I don't know how to move forward, I don't understand this particular word? There are minor adjustments that you could be making there. And then finally, card sorting, which is probably what you guys have seen if you look at like user design and like design thinking experiments, where you could be going through and sorting different features and figuring out where they belong. Then the mass user surveys, that's more of the Survey Monkey. So if you're curious, I would keep these usually to like 5 to 7 questions, because people are probably not going to answer beyond that, about what people want. Are there specific features they want in your product? What are their problems? Give them some optional boxes so people who are willing to spend more time can put narratives in. That'll really help with your feature development. And then finally is analytics driven. So Erin talked a little bit about A/B testing. That's one thing you can do directly on your site to determine whether certain landing pages or even certain versions of your product are working better than others and have higher rates of completion. Tools that you can use are, two of the ones that I like are, and I'm sure there's many more out there, are Hotjar and Lucky Orange. They actually allow you to see what people are doing on your website. It feels a little bit spy-ish. But for example, Lucky Orange, we use that on our website. And every person who comes onto our site, we don't know their identity, but we can see where they're clicking. Like, are they getting stuck on the pricing page, or are they getting stuck on a particular part of your page? That kind of starts to lead you to think about things that you want to change. And then finally, Google Analytics. Implementing Google Analytics on every page of your product, as well as your main site as well, obviously, is going to give you a lot of insight into what you need to change, where people are getting stuck, and what the pain points are.
I'll say one thing here that we use at SMITH.AI that's extremely helpful, and then I'll share one question from a user that came in. Google Tag Manager is one of the most useful tools that you will find. Analytics can tell you sort of the journey, the page views, etc., but you also want to see the events and actions that happen. So Tag Manager, actually now it's much more advanced than it was in early days. You can not only identify a button click, but it will anticipate all those other buttons on your site that have similar coding that you can say, yep, that button too, I want to track that. Thanks for catching it, Google. So Google's intelligence comes in very handy right now. And you can say, thanks for basically turning me, a marketer, into an engineer. I can, with my developer team, adding just a few lines of code to the site, forever then in the future go into Tag Manager, identify the actions that I want to track, whether it's like Erin showed, scheduling a call or getting started with a certain plan. Which plans are people choosing? You can see on a website the heat map and where generally people scroll down to on a page, the different sort of flow that they follow when moving through and navigating your website, but actually seeing the actions and being able to trace them back to the source, whether it came through Facebook or an email that you sent out. That's extremely important to know, hey, that email that I sent to my clients about first users or testing this or a new offering that we have, how did that perform? Did they just visit the site, or did they actually click to schedule a call? That's, did they click the social share buttons on the site, etc. So use that, alongside the rest of this to make sure that the work you're doing is being logged in a database, which is basically what Google Analytics is consolidating and visualizing for you. Now, one question here that I think is a really good time to bring it up, as others might be thinking about this too. We've talked a lot about marketing separate products and externally, for use by clients. But what about products, and Dorna, I know that you talk a lot about this, that start or are incubated in-house at the law firm for internal use? Maybe it makes sense to use Documate to make sure internal forms and processes are always completed properly, that those automations improve productivity for staff and reduce the amount of workload per client. And then once you've worked out those kinks, maybe then you bring it to market. So that's a different approach here that I thought was a good question that was brought up, and wanted to pose it to you both.
Yeah, we see that happen a lot because, not everyone is thinking entrepreneurially about starting a legal tech company. It's a huge shift from having a law firm. And so starting something at the law firm is sort of your safe first step of dipping your toes into the waters and figuring out what it's like to incorporate technology into your practice. The way that we usually see it start is with an intake process. So a lot of firms nowadays are not even using like an online intake process yet. We see all the time clients who come to us and they're still using a PDF form that they're sending to the client. Client has to type information out in and send it back. And you're losing a lot of people there because people get frustrated with those forms. A lot of people are not in front of a desktop computer most of the time. They want something that they can sit in front of their computer and fill out your intake on their phone. So that's often the very first step that people take, is just putting their client intake online. The client fills out their information, and then through something like Documate, you can take that information and automate your first set of documents with it. So you start to realize those efficiencies because you've spent maybe 5 minutes emailing the client and you already have all of their information in a very basic first draft of your documents. And then you can start to transition that into something that's more of a client-facing legal product. And then the decision to actually kind of separate that from your law firm becomes one that depends on how much the law firm wants to continue supporting it, how self-sustainable that product is, whether it is, as Erin was saying, whether it isn't more of a lead generator for your firm, or whether it's something that can be self-sustainable and profitable on its own.
And I think, before Erin chimes in, I'm thinking about what you said earlier, Erin, around getting the team buy-in and getting their contribution. You may actually get a lot of contributions if they are using those forms themselves and they're coming to you with the challenges and struggles. How much better is it to go through that testing in real life and practice, not just initial beta user testing, but to say, like, does this speed up or slow down my team? What questions do they have actually as people who have expertise in these areas? And how can that sort of limit the number of issues that happen when you do bring it to market? Because we know, and we'll touch on this subject shortly, because Dorna, I know it's something you were prepared to talk about, which is customer support documentation and a whole lot of other things that are actually sort of the minimum viable platform needs that you're going to have before you bring something to market. You can get a lot of those questions actually answered internally first. So Erin, did you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I would just say I think it's a great idea to test out the software within your firm for the same reasons that Maddy said. Like, no matter how awesome Documate is, and it truly is, especially the fact that you can do it on mobile, like, it just always blows my mind. But no matter how awesome it is, like, it's only as awesome as the energy you put into it to build it out in a way that makes the most sense for your team and for your clients. And what I mean by that is, like, how you ask the questions to elicit responses that are really going to work for whatever product you want them to end up with. And so their testing is like 100% crucial. And if you can have the people on your team work it out, like Maddy said, and figure out where the pain points are, or confusion, or where there might be formatting issues, or where we're sending the wrong information to the wrong part of the form, it's going to be that much easier when you actually launch. You'll be able to sleep well at night, knowing that somebody just purchased your product and you don't need to be on standby for an issue because they will be okay.
Well, and here's the other thing, it's nice when clients and customers tell you, hey, this thing is broken, or that link doesn't work on your site, or I couldn't get through. But how rare is that compared to when your staff is trying to do their work and get their job done and they can't and they're blocked? You're going to hear about it. So it is a much more reliable first step to getting that identification of errors and issues and just inefficiencies that are going to exist whenever you build something new, and to expect it, but to bring it to the most accountable group is normally the in-house group, more than the clients who are going to bail before they send you a detailed user experience interview.
Mm-hmm.
So Dorna, and then we'll talk about messaging shortly, because I think that's an area of testing and testing assumptions that is not as easily achieved internally. But let's talk about customer service for a second, just in setting yourself up for success and not answering those 2 a.m. emails from someone who is super excited about your 24/7 legal product. How do you set that up, Dorna? What's the sort of minimum viable setup there?
Yeah, so I think you want to think about both support and documentation within your product and outside of your product. So within your product, what I've been seeing a lot more people doing is putting videos in. So you may have someone going through a flow, and even you might choose to have like a cartoon type video that explains the process, or you might even choose to have your own face on there as kind of the lawyer and the face of the project, telling people what to do. It has been proven that when people go to a lawyer's website and they see a video of the lawyer talking about what they do versus a headshot of the lawyer standing in front of some fancy building, they're much more likely to purchase because they feel like it's a personable process. And the same goes for a legal product. When you have the person talking into a video and guiding the user through the process, they're much more likely to listen, especially if they're not, you have people who are more readers and will read all your long text, and you have people who just want to sit there and watch someone explain the process. So that's going to be one thing that prevents some of those calls. They're not going to need to ask you questions because you're providing that information for them on the screen. But alongside that, I think you want to have both video and written documentation on how to use your product. So that could be videos on the entire process. And I recommend keeping those really short. People like 2 to 3 minute videos on each topic. You can now go into YouTube and actually set like sections onto your YouTube videos, but having those separated out will help people actually find them much easier. And then alongside that, you're going to want written documentation on each of those different topics, because you don't know who your users are going to be and what they're more comfortable with. And whether they even want to put their audio on if they're at work or somewhere else using your product.
That's a great point, right? And actually, even with video, you can easily add a whole transcript or closed captioning, so that if it's something that you are sharing with people and they're not always going to turn the volume up, they can still get that message. Or even sometimes when you're sharing a screenshot video, Loom is also an excellent tool for customer support. It's free. I'll enter that into the comments. That is a way to have a really quick sort of screen cap going through, hey, don't look at my face. I mean, I'll be here in the corner, but look at the screen and I'll walk you through this. The closed captioning there, if you're in that mode of looking and reading a screen, can be tapping into more of that same space in the brain. So it makes more sense to read along while you're seeing something. So that's an area that can be explored as well. Now, one of the things that we also see, and Erin, I know you have chat on your site, one of the ways to identify the questions that people have once you've actually established that this is a product that people can explore and sign up for, you've launched it, you have your website, whether it's integrated into your existing one or a separate standalone site, you can use chat to also discover what questions people are asking, both within your site and to get a sense for what brought them to your site if it's already starting to bring in organic traffic. Because Google Analytics often doesn't tell you, unfortunately, what the keywords were that someone typed in for their query that brought them to your site. It's very limited still. So unless you're advertising and you know exactly the keywords, organically, it's very hard to see. You can use chat to go through the transcripts, the questions that people ask, which typically match that are on search. So if they ask something on Google and they come to your site, you know that there are not so many readers anymore, if we even know what a reader is these days. And they're going to go into chat and they're going to start asking for answers before diving in deeply to your site. And Erin has built quite a large content repository. I'm sure that you see this too, and that brings in more traffic and more questions. Start there and use that as the basis for your FAQ, because support isn't just for existing users, it's also got a sales function, and it's going to eliminate boundaries and barriers, or maybe even sort of screen out certain people by educating them on the things that are top of mind as they encounter your product for the first time.
Yeah, and when you do see things on chat, on you're looking at the articles on your site and you're seeing people are visiting a particular article or a particular video, those are also signs that maybe there are things you need to change in your product. Because if people are having to go to your help documentation every time to figure that out, that means they're not easily finding it within your product.
I 100% agree, but I also want to back up and say, if they are going to certain tools or certain videos or certain articles, then that's also very exciting, right? And you've driven a lot of traffic there. And so we want to make sure that you have a call to action on those pages that are relevant to the type of content you have. So if it's how to tell your spouse that you want a divorce, then maybe the call to action isn't necessarily, buy now, because it doesn't sound like they're really ready. Maybe it's like schedule a free phone call or download your planning list, so that we now have their email and we can begin to funnel them into whatever marketing campaign that we're doing.
Absolutely. That's a great point, and that's where testing comes in really handy too. You can even use that when you have social posts and you use different calls to action there. If you have, which I recommend, a pixel on your website from Facebook, there are various pixels you can add to basically identify when someone visits your website, and then re-identify them when they're on Facebook or other channels, and to show them retargeting ads. You can do that. Actually, it's not that difficult, but you may find that some of the messaging initially that you show them, some of the ads, so to speak, that you show them might just be more content, might be a short video demo on what it is that your product delivers. And then later on, as you have had more exposure to them, then you make the sort of sales ask. So, be mindful of that, no matter where the messaging is, and even in your emails, if you have email nurturing campaigns or drips, once you capture that contact information, or you're calling and following up, that's an area where you want to be mindful of, where did that person come in? Were they a direct referral and they just haven't signed up yet? Or were they just exploring and they came in through organic search, which is really on the other end of the spectrum? Did they hit an article content piece? They may not yet be buyer ready. So I think that we have, covered a lot of ground here. I know Dorna, and Erin, we have also talked about reviews and building evangelists. So once you have moved internal to external, or once your product is sort of market ready, you're going to start getting clients. And we all know, and this is, the easiest and cheapest way to market is through existing happy clients. How do you start gathering reviews and testimonials? What are the most effective practices there that you both have experienced?
Well, Dorna is a genius at this, so I'll let her speak to it, but I'm her product evangelist, right? Like, there isn't a webinar or speaking engagement or white paper where I'm not talking about her and how much I love her and respect her and her product, and how important and integral it's been to building a DIY site. So how did you do that?
Yeah, so the interesting thing about our platform is it is a platform. And so there are lawyers of different law firms in different areas who can be our initial users and then kind of spread the word. throughout their own niche practices. When we started out and we were trying to find our initial customer, we actually worked a lot with legal aid organizations because it was an area that we kind of knew. We knew they needed help. We kind of gave some stuff to them for free early on and helped them build out platforms. But then we knew that they could spread the word because they already had their own internal networks. So finding your initial users early on and giving them things that you know they'll love and involving them in the process, because early on your product is not going to be the greatest. You know, you're always going to have those beta users where you're almost you look back like a year later and you're kind of embarrassed of what you didn't have. But there are early adopters who will accept that and actually really thrive in that environment, and they'll want to give you feedback. So having those users, I mean, even Erin has made tons of great suggestions for our platform in terms of what we can add. And we have customers like multiple times a day who are telling us, you know, add this feature, add that feature, but they're doing it from a place of love because they like using your product and they like spreading the word about your product and they want to use it more. So that's been really useful for us. We also, I mean, in terms of getting reviews, referral programs can be good. We have done that a little bit in the past. The kind of prototypical startup story about that is Dropbox, where in the early days of Dropbox, they were giving, I think it was like $5 credits for any person that you referred. And back then they had, I think it was like something like 30% conversion rate there, just based on referrals. That is useful, but referrals are becoming less and less powerful because I think people are just becoming a little bit bored by them and they're seeing them everywhere. But they are still really useful in the consumer sphere versus the more B2B sphere. So that's another way that we've found that's been useful to build up reviews and build up online reviews as well.
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the things that we're seeing is review and sort of like reputation marketing rather than reputation management. So the conversation used to be around, how do I get more reviews? And I'm just going to feed them into Google, which is important, and other sites. But now it's, how do I use all these reviews that I've been told to get for so long, right? And the conversation is sort of almost a misnomer when you say management. It's more about marketing. And we did a webinar, which is on our channel and you can watch it, with Nice Job. And Curtis there talks a lot about how you can leverage reviews, how you can use their tool or others to try and get reviews on multiple platforms, or the one that the user is already logged into. You're logged into Facebook, you're logged into Google. How do you facilitate more easily getting reviews? And then how do you show them on your website almost as a pop-up, you know, similar to the way that you would see chat? Does it get your attention, right? And sort of those activity-driven review widgets are really effective in drawing your attention to that latest 5-star review, testimonial, photo, whatever. So that's something that I would encourage people look into is, okay, you're going to spend all this time and energy getting these evangelists. Your early users are among the most powerful there and the best to leverage. How do you make sure that people see what they've said? You know, we see getting photos and headshots and a polished testimonial. That's extremely powerful. It's also sort of getting higher and higher on the page, right? Like normally you would see reviews at the very end of the page. You know, 10 years ago, reviews were sort of the afterthought. Now you start to see them high up on the website. You see, obviously Google is prioritizing them. We all know about that from the business owner, lawyer perspective. But make sure that that is something that's incorporated pretty deeply into the product. Is it on your pricing page? Is it in your buyer sales funnel? Is it in your emails? Have you even integrated that into your email signature? There's a great tool called Wise Stamp, and I'll provide that as well. Wise like an owl, Wise Stamp. It's a free tool that you can just integrate into every email system, and it has your latest review, maybe even your latest blog post if you're promoting content. Or
what was the name of the
Nice
Was it
job.
called Nice Job?
Yep.
Nice Job. Okay. Thank
Exactly.
you.
Nicejob.co, not .com. And the really amazing thing is they actually even provide convert websites. That is their own terminology. Convert is how they phrase them. And they're extremely affordable, under $500 a month for a website. So if you find, okay, I need to stand this up and it needs to be separate from my own site, I was pretty impressed with that, especially at a solo small firm price point. And that's, recent pricing. So for anyone who's sort of exploring this and sees it as separate from their own firm site, definitely encourage checking that out. But it really starts with, as I think that, earlier question came through, get started, try it internally, make sure that it serves a purpose, because you can do all the marketing in the world. If it's not impactful, it doesn't promote productivity, it doesn't increase your reach for your target audience you can serve, who wouldn't have the wherewithal to hire your law firm or isn't quite ready because they don't recognize that they need an attorney, which obviously the Clio report says year after year, you can build branding and establish trust with a lighter price point and then move into the different levels alongside your law firm to make sure that there's opportunities for upsell there.
Absolutely. And don't underestimate the power of free trial. I mean, it is like, it made probably the biggest difference of any marketing tool that we've used, at all, especially in this legal market, because people are really skeptical about trying anything other than lawyers. And while they are frustrated by the high cost of lawyers, they also know that it's professional services and they're getting good reviews. So that free trial has been everything to us, very, very much like a magic wand. I highly, highly recommend it.
I also agree wholeheartedly with that. I think there's just so much competition also on the internet, but a lot of the things that you see on Google, if you type in, for example, divorce, are not that good. And so for you to be able to show them with no cost how good your product is and build that credibility is really powerful.
It says, let me prove it to you.
And I think, we've had hundreds and hundreds of people use the free trial code, and only one person took advantage of it and used the free trial to do all of their divorce paperwork and then cancel. And part of me was like, wow, nice work, lady. But it's that it's something we can do for free. And so sure, I lost out on one sale. But how many other hundreds of sales did we get because we were willing to offer that free trial? So
and she's probably talking about it with everyone too. So you probably
I know I need to reach out to her and get her to review, because her forms looked flawless. I was like, this is amazing. Who are you? Probably a lawyer, but we'll see.
But that paid you back, right, in the referrals, and that's something that you can track. If you have a user and you give them their own promo codes, that can be extremely effective in helping them get the word out for you. So we've run to the end of the hour. It's amazing how quickly the time goes. But I will provide your contact information to everyone who joined us live and who's watching later. And obviously documate.org, hellodivorce.com. Check out what Dorna and Erin are doing, and words to live by, right? I mean, they are living and breathing this advice every single day. Free trials are important, and that's a practice that we put into place too. So if you would like to try SMITH.AI, our receptionists are available for you 24/7 on the phone, on your website for chat, on text messages, and on Facebook, as you get those channels stood up, both for your law firm and for these products. So please get in touch with Dorna and Erin. They are stupendous at what they do, and will really be an incredible resource for you as you go through this journey. Thank you everyone for joining us, and I look forward to next time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Bye everyone.